You might be looking for reasons, but there are no reasons. This is AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. I'm your host, Ramya Amadin, and the quote from this week is by Nina LaCour. Hold Still is the book that it comes from, and the theme around it is, well, pretty obvious. It's regret. Regret, resentment, however you want to call it. I also think there are some parallel themes going on here, like purpose and motivation and or explanation and justification for the things that we want to figure out but can't really put our finger on. You know, we paint so many pictures with words, and it's always beautiful to do that. It's always satisfying to hear someone else say what we can't, or write down the things that we feel. But sometimes things are mysterious. It's just what it is. And isn't that also the beauty of life? Take that in. Maybe go check out Hold Still by Nina LaCour to see if there's any other great gems like this one in the book. Let's go to CELA. The Center for Equitable Library Access offers us 3 featured titles right on their homepage, along with, of course, their catalog of audiobooks and ebooks available in your favorite format. If you go to celalibrary.ca, that's where you can find all these books. And the 3 featured titles I mentioned up there are Queen Charlotte by Julia Quinn. This is a historical romance. We also have Page Boy by Elliot Page, and this is an LGBTQ plus biography / memoir. Snow Road Station by Elizabeth Hay is a family stories, and that is also up there for you to check out. And along with these 3 featured titles, you can find many other summer reads. I say summer reads because we've had the last 2 conversations here on the podcast. Incredible talk about summer reads and what's available for us up there. We're visiting, as we do once a month, with Sara Hillis, talking about our favorite narrators. We pick a narrator and we go through their process, their background, how they got to where they are as some of our favorite voices in the audiobook world. And today we're hitting our second golden voice of 2023. It's fantastic to feature some of these people with accolades, and it's also cool that they're getting accolades to begin with, so we can feature them, talk about them, and enjoy their performances through their stories and their explanations of how they do what they do and why they enjoy it. This is AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. And once a month, we get to know some of the voices that we enjoy listening to in the audiobook world. So Sara Hillis joins us, and we feature a voice, a notable narrator in the world of audiobooks, and we shout out these voices behind our favorite listens and get to know their fascinating lives and backgrounds. This month, we are going through our Golden Voices, one of the 2023 Audiophile Magazine Golden Voices features. Sara, who's up?
Well, our second golden voice of this little series is Marin Ireland. Mm-hmm. And she's not a narrator I've actually encountered before, but it looks like she's done a lot of work in the last 11 years or so. She started narrating in 2012 and has done a lot of kind of modern fiction, I think probably some kind of fantasy, some horror, some things like that, like just lots of different kinds of stuff. Over the years, she's done Frederick Backman's Beartown series, which I don't know if it's German or Dutch, but it's English translations of these series, which people have praised her for. And she won an Audie for Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, that was in 2020. And that's another thing that people have kind of praised her for critically. She is an actress. She was born in California, I guess, and went to a progressive kind of elementary school that doesn't exist anymore, she says. So it was like private, but it just, I guess it lost money. Who knows? I don't know.
Okay.
But so she got to do a lot of interesting things. But when she was a kid, she wasn't very, publicly minded. She wasn't one of these kids that was like, I want to sing and dance and do whatever. She really didn't. She read a lot of books, actually.
Mm.
And then once she figured out that acting could kind of let you be someone else for a while, that was what sort of drew her to it. So it was less about being acclaimed. It was more about the actual art of doing the acting.
That's an interesting perspective. So, because a lot of the people we've featured talk about going into performance right away and getting right into this and being a big priority of theirs, maybe through background of their parents or just where they grew up and such.
Yeah. She was actually pretty, I don't know if she was actually solitary, but she said she read a lot of books. And to me, being a bookish child myself, that translates into having a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah. But you were always interested in performance, no?
I actually, I guess if I have to say it, I guess I just did it a lot because they made me do it at school.
They made me do
Well, they didn't make me do it, but
yeah.
But it was, again, it was never about like, look at me, I'm awesome. It was like,
Right.
well, I guess I have this
guess this
skill
will
and I
translate.
guess we're going to try it out. And yeah.
Okay. All right. So back to Marin. She went to books.
Thank you, Barbara Walters.
That's a familiar voice. I mean, name. So Marin was more interested in books. And then when did it all kind of click for her? Not narration necessarily, but all the other stuff leading into.
Yeah, I think it was in her young adulthood. She started performing in plays and she realized that the characters were just so interesting to her that she really loved embodying the characters. And so, yeah, she just kept doing more and more plays. She ended up going for the last couple of years of high school to a boarding school for the arts, like, Fame or whatever, And then she went to the Conservatory of Drama at the University of Connecticut, which at least one other person we've looked at has done. So that's a pretty famous school, I take it. And from there, she went to New York and kind of hung out in New York and got, various off-Broadway roles and started working in TV a little bit. She's been in almost every Law and Order franchise as a random character, like on a given episode kind of deal. From 2002 onward was kind of when that started to happen. And yeah, she started narrating, interestingly, in a really fun way. She was actually handpicked by an author. Jeffrey Deaver had seen her in something. He's the Lincoln Rhyme guy. For people that probably know him, right? He does all the Lincoln Rhyme books about the forensic guy that's in a wheelchair and stuff. And I forget what book it was and what if it was. I think it might have been that same series, but I'm not sure because there's a female person involved in it later on too. So he saw Marin in something. She doesn't even remember what he saw her in, but I guess he talked to the publishers and said, I'd like that voice to narrate my book. And so Simon & Schuster said, would you like to do this? And she's like, sure, I guess. I don't know. I've never done it before. But then she really just loved the experience so much. It was a quick, get to grips with how to do this kind of thing and then just do it kind of thing. And she rolled with it and she really liked it. She's
serendipitous.
Yeah, it was really kind of neat. She's a very instinctive narrator, she says. She doesn't like put a lot of notes on pages like some narrators do. She uses, like if for a series, she'll use clips from the other books to make sure her voices are, consistent and that kind of thing. But she just listens as she reads. She hears what she's reading in her head, which is an interesting talent.
I guess, is that really skill? Going back to what she calls herself, which is an instinctive narrator. Some of these people's kind of like intuition of how to do things is just as interesting to follow as skill development, right? Because all these other things that she did, which is performance-based and going to school for it and, having experience with film and TV before getting into narration, like, I always wonder, is it a 50-50? It's a bit of that, but also you just know what would sound good. You
Yeah,
can hear it.
I think because when she reads a script, she's always looking for the voices of the characters in the writing of that. And she feels that books can do the same thing, even down to the narrative voice, even to the rhythm of the prose. It can show you how you should be reading the book if you're paying attention. So she's very much about, like, everything she reads is like a drama in her head, like everything.
Right.
She absorbs it that way, I guess, because she is an actor first, I guess.
Yeah, and then the real skill would be to take that out of your head and then put it down in audio, right? Like to make that performance match what you think it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah. So she tends to go in the studio. She'll say to the producer, "I'm going to try this. I hope you don't think it's too over the top, but I'm going to try this and see how you like it. And then if you want to correct me, you can go ahead and do that." But she's not. They don't like. I mean, sometimes they must discuss a little bit, but mostly it's just she just kind of goes for it and and lets the producer guide her in that sense, but mostly just does what she feels the book calls for, I guess.
Interesting. What kind of TV has she taken part in?
She's been in, again, the Law and Order stuff. And she was certainly in Amazon's, I haven't watched this show, mind you. It's called Sneaky Pete. She was Julia Bowman in Sneaky Pete, and that was a more main role. That was in 2015 to 2019. She's been in, again, another show I've never watched, which feels wrong somehow, The Umbrella Academy on Netflix. Yeah. She played Sissy Cooper there. And what other things? She's done lots of movies, most of them more kind of independent movies, and lots of plays that are more, I would say, more modern in scope. I forget if she's actually won a Tony, but she's had Tony nominations for sure. And she's won a Theatre World Award, and she's won a couple film awards for various movies that she's been in. She was in The Irishman, which I can't remember her character, but I did watch that movie because it was one that went straight to streaming, right? That was the big thing about The Irishman. It didn't even hit theaters because it was a pandemic, and Martin Scorsese, of course, did that movie. And,
so she's had, I guess, not necessarily minor roles, but, one-off roles and things like Sissy and Umbrella Academy was several episodes, but not like a recurring character and such. Yeah. So she takes on jobs everywhere.
Yeah, she has a busy schedule. In fact, she has, at least in the early days for sure, and possibly even now, she can't always read a whole book before she starts narrating. We've talked about these narrators that are meticulous in their reading, and she tries really hard, but she's just so busy that she tries to get the pertinent stuff to make sure she's not going to mess up and like give someone the wrong accent or something like this.
Right.
But sometimes the end comes and she's like, "Oh," and she has to like keep it together, even though it's like a really heart-wrenching ending or something, because she hasn't read it before. And she's in the studio trying to,
she's having a candid reaction to her own reads.
Yeah.
I kind of love that. I'd be the person to do that.
Yeah.
Not that I do now, not admitting to anything. Nope. But it's kind of an interesting approach, almost artistic if you think about it. You're responding along with the audience to what you're reading.
Yeah. She's also very good at using silence, like a lot of our narrators. She doesn't, like, I read Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. It's a crazy novel, but it has some really serious bits in it. It's a total weirdo, horror, odd kind of novel, full of blood and gore and all the rest of it. But
Stephen King-esque.
Yeah. But then there's these serious parts, like this white cop has to deal with the fact that she reacted too quickly and shot a black woman, admittedly in a supernatural setting, but it was still she came back from the supernatural setting and she had to live with the fact that she had done this. And would I have reacted so quickly if it was a white woman I saw with a gun in her hand? Because the black woman was actually trying to do a good thing, but she didn't know that. And it really messed her up. And I think Marin Ireland did a great job of narrating the thoughts of the woman and because she just was totally destroyed by what she had done. She didn't think of herself as that sort of a cop, and it was
Now,
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, it's kind of interesting to think about, like, how the people translate. We've talked about this in the past, right? How performance translates from stage to film to TV, even, like if you're making the distinction between the two, to narration, and also when people can hear your voice in their work, like an author, producer, etc., etc. Did she talk about that, like having to work directly with authors?
Well, there was one time when I don't know if she really worked directly with the author herself, but she was narrating Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. And Jenny Jackson just kind of showed up at the studio to kind of see what was going on. I don't think she was, going to put her oar in or anything, but she was just like, how's the book going, kind of thing. And here's Marin, she saw her through the glass and she's like, oh my gosh. So I still have to narrate while this woman who wrote this thing is listening to me.
Oh, she felt the pressure, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I never thought of it that way. Like, I guess if your process is so completely separate from the narrator, from the author, because not everyone's is, right? Like, some people are making it a project to work directly with the author or have conversations with them or kind of dig a little deeper into that side of things. Production notes, maybe. But for other narrators, it's like, oh, I don't know. I never thought about it this way. Like, the author's going to hear me narrate.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Okay, what else? I'm curious about her vocal preparation.
Yeah, she's pretty conscientious about that, because she does a lot of plays and you have to project your voice and such to hit the back of the room, as they say. But if you're doing a play as well as doing a book, you have to kind of chill out a little bit on both ends so that you're not ruining your voice. Because yes, the book is more intimate, but you have to work for a really sustained period of time. So it still is hard on your voice. So I think she's discovered a bit that less can be more, in terms of using her voice carefully and not messing with it too much.
Now, you're a vocalist. We're getting to know you a lot this month as well, Sarah.
Yes, apparently.
Okay, so you sing, and you've had experience with theatrical work and such. Do you have any like techniques or things that you do to take care of your voice? This is something that I've been getting into lately. I'm loving hearing actors and actresses and operatic singers, just people who are, Broadway, where you're using your voice so much and so often, but it's your tool, right, for work. It's what's getting you paid. So you're also kind of making sure that your vocal cords are chilling.
I actually am a bad vocal take care of her. I don't do a lot of special stuff for my voice, and I probably should, because I don't think it's as strong as it could be. I had some growths on my vocal cords that had to be lasered off when I was about 2. And so I was talking in a whispery voice when I was really little. And then, so I don't know that the voice is quite as, I go to a big social event for like a weekend event, and by the end of it, I can hardly talk, because I haven't done much with taking care of my voice. I've been, using microphones and yelling and talking, hi, and it gets to me after a while. So no, I'm not the best. I've heard pineapple juice. I've heard a lot of things.
Yeah. There's always something out there. But then I think along the lines of rest as well, right? Like, how do you rest when vocals are your main gig?
Oh yeah, you just make sure you don't drink too much alcohol when you're ready to use your voice, that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah.
And so.
And for her, Marin, she was talking about that translation of visual media, stage presence, all that stuff to narrating, which is sitting in a studio.
Yeah, you have to sit really still. It's totally exhausting because you have to not be tense, because that messes with your voice, but you also have to not move. So you have to be still and relaxed. And she's talking about when you wait around on a set, it can be quite exhausting too, because you're not working until they call you to work. They say, come in for the shoot, but, we're going to call you when it's time, And she finds that really exhausting. But she also finds, like, the work of sitting in that studio for hours on end an exhausting process.
It would be. Hours on end. Like, when I think of a 25, 30-hour book, and then how, not even how long one session is, but how many sessions it takes to go through that book, whether or not you've read it. First of all, then having read the book ahead of time is like, wow, that is a lot of work. But, being able to deliver consistently, because you're not doing a 30-hour book in one day. That's horrifying.
Oh, no.
No, right? But then that 30-hour book those segments have to fit nicely next to each other. So you got to find that spot again, so to speak.
Yeah. I know that when I do speaking and I record and I have to take a break, it's always a bit hard to find the rhythm I was using before and make the edit not sound ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why voice work is so interesting, because with anything, actually, like whether it's interacting more with other people, like video games or whatever, where there's a lot more back and forth and dialogue and drama, or doing just one sit down. Because don't you recognize that, like, sometimes when I listen to an audiobook, I can tell that this was recorded separately, or this was a retake, or this section sounds like you just woke up.
Yeah, sometimes the compression level's different. Sometimes the microphone usage is slightly different. You can tell.
Yeah. Does re-listening to, a couple minutes or whatever, that would probably be helpful.
I think a lot of people do it that way, yeah. And she does it that way too.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So obviously she enjoys narration as its own thing.
Yeah, she does. It actually helps her connect to her family, because her sister lives in Germany, and her sister's always like, Marin, I've run out of your books. You have to narrate another book for me. So
I love that.
So she narrates to her sister or to her family. Like that's the people she's sort of talking to in her mind when she's doing this.
Yeah, I really like that. And has she talked recently about taking on other work, or what kind of work she would prefer doing, things like that, seasoned narrator stuff?
She hasn't really said too much. She did a book just March 2023. It got released, so she's still working on books, obviously. And the name of it just escapes me right now. Oh, it's an Owen King book, another Owen King book. Mm-hmm. So she mostly, I think, works with Simon & Schuster, but I think she's done other publishers too.
Right.
So I think it's basically they throw her stuff and she's like, sure, because she really finds it hard to say no to anything. And the only time she's ever said no actually was when she just couldn't fit it in her schedule. It wasn't to do with the book or anything like that. It was just, I can't do it. I'm too busy right now. So for when you need me to do it, right? So
yeah. Okay, and we're wrapping up, but I realized we didn't even talk about what her sound is like.
It's really nice. It's really nice. It's really it's kind of like how I talk a little bit, lower voice, pretty steady as far as the narration goes. Able to do obviously amazing characters, accents, dramatic stuff, and then to come back down again and do this lovely sort of narration that just takes you along with the story. She uses the author's writing to tell her how to narrate, and yeah.
Yeah. I found her performances, like her style, to be very steady. She doesn't go in and out very dramatically from voice to voice or character to narration kind of thing, which I liked. I liked having that kind of smooth flow. Yeah, but it also depends on the book, I guess.
Yeah, the book I read had a bunch of Appalachian accents in it, and she's very, very
really
good at the voice.
I did not.
It's awesome. It's just completely amazing. So yeah, she has that dramatic range. Definitely, she can do a more steady book and a more more over the top kind of book too.
When she was Sissy on Umbrella Academy, she had a lot of great crying scenes.
Okay, I really have to watch this show now.
It's a good show. Extra plug. Awesome. Okay, well, I mean, is it fair to ask you who you think we're going to feature for August?
Well, I know we're going to feature our third Golden Voice. We have a third Golden Voice. This is Kevin R. Free. Okay. And I know nothing about this person at this point, so we're going to learn about him together.
We'll learn together for the second half of summer. Thanks, Sarah.
No problem.
We were talking Marin Ireland for today's Know Your Narrator, and that's it for this week AMI audiobook review. If you want to hang out with us, join us next week for a brand new episode where we talk all things audiobooks. I'm your host Ramia Ahmedin with technical producer Nasreen Abdel Majid, and until that next episode comes your way, happy audiobook listening.